Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Hurricane Fiona and why I don't think this is going to become another Hurricane Maria. Because in Hurricane Maria, the state's power grid was completely toppled. This is happening with Hurricane Fiona too. And we've had some other really bad power crises, like look at what happened in Texas in February 2021 as a result of a cold wave and several winter storms that buffeted the region in snow. The power grids are not winterized, therefore leading to a widespread power outage. But what happened with Fiona was actually closely related with Hurricane Maria. As we know, around this time, is specifically September 20th, 2017, Hurricane Maria made landfall in Puerto Rico with 155-mile-an-hour winds. One of the strongest, if not the strongest storm to ever make landfall on the island. And it brought devastating effects in the process, including causing nearly 3,000 deaths in just Puerto Rico alone, and causing $90 billion in damage in Puerto Rico. And keep in mind, that's like 90% of Puerto Rico's economy. So it was very, very bad. Hurricane Maria also completely toppled the state's power grid. And it took a while to rebuild. By the end of September, only 5% of the island had power restored to them. Even in early October, there was still most of the island had no power. Some people were without power even until May. And they stopped giving aid to them like in July. When the power lines were rebuilt, they were weakened, thus leaving them more susceptible. People began to lose power way before a storm even came. And with Fiona, everyone wound up losing power. Our 1.4 plus million customers of Puerto Rico lost power when Fiona came. But do I think it's going to turn into another Maria? No. First of all, Maria was a high-end Category 4. This is a low-end Category 1. 2022 has actually been remarkably quiet, but Fiona could be a storm that brings high impact into the southeastern United States. It's expected to strengthen into either a Category 3 or 4 hurricane, with, of course, that one stray model saying it's going to become a Cat 5, which I doubt. And we're not sure where it's going to go. It could go into the open Atlantic. It could go to the Gulf Coast. I seem to think it's going to go to Florida. We'll have to see what happens and how strong it is and how much impact it causes once it goes there. And we'll see what the intensity is. It might not even become a major hurricane. It might fizzle out completely after this. But it definitely will cause some damage and deaths in Puerto Rico, at least given the impact it's had so far, with it completely knocking down the power grid. And this could have a lasting impact where people die or become discovered well after the fact, like what happened with, again, the February 2021 Texas power crisis. But we're still not sure about the storm yet. Because while Fiona's forecast was up to 30 inches of rain, and by the way, Maria dropped like over 40 inches of rain, that's at its peak, but widespread amounts of 20 plus are forecasted, which will cause heavy flooding. The wind will not be of serious concern. However, I will warn you of how much impact Sandy managed to cause while dropping less than an inch of rain on the city and about a consistent inch on the metro. I believe the city itself got 0.94 or 0.98 or something like that. And with winds only around 80 miles an hour, which is Category 1 equivalent, Sandy went extratropical, but parts of Long Island did see 75 mile an hour sustained winds before this happened. So New York was the only state that saw true hurricane force impacts as a result of Sandy. No other state saw that. And as you know, Sandy caused over 150 deaths across the region, with 90 in New York and New Jersey alone. New York and New Jersey alone saw $62 billion in damage. So we can clearly see how destructive these storms can actually wind up being. So a storm doesn't really need to have high winds. It could cause destructive flash flooding. I mean, Ida is another example in the Northeast. I mean, peak winds were only 40 miles an hour, but that flash flooding, which came down at over 3 inches per hour in some places, wound up leading to about 55 deaths in the Northeast and $20 billion in damage in the process. And again, the winds were very weak. 40 miles an hour is all that it managed to produce. And yet, look at all the impact that it caused. So we can't say just that Fiona is only a Cat 1, that it won't cause a destructive impact. Now, I don't think it's going to be the damage toll that's that high, but I think it's going to be the death toll. And I think that we will see dozens of people die due to the storm, and it caused a couple $2 billion in damage. Again, I could be wrong on both ends, but this is just my prediction of what Fiona is going to do as reports come in. Now, as far as what happens later, my guess is it's going to go off to the Bahamas, but then stay offshore, which could lead to a repeat of Dorian. Dorian actually did cause a death in Puerto Rico, but minimal damage across the region overall, where it then, as a Category 1, where it then slammed the Bahamas as a Category 5. It had extreme stillness, leading to some parts of the island recording Category 5 winds for 22 hours, causing 74 deaths and $3.4 billion in damage, making it the costliest hurricane in the Bahamas. Weakening to a Category 2, it made a very brief landfall over North Carolina, but across the Carolinas, it still saw 5 deaths and $1.2 billion in damage. There was also strong impact in Florida, as well as in, even in the Northeast, we saw some minor impact. And in Canada, of course, managed to see some impact from Dorian as well. And even though the Wikipedia article says it's only caused 84 deaths, when you actually add the numbers, it was 86. I just want to make it very clear. I tried to get it fixed back in December, and it wound up failing.
He's doing all right.
So, that is my latest estimates on Fiona. Now, there are a few factors I would like to discuss about why Fiona won't be like a Dorian. First of all, Dorian was a Category 5. Second of all, it stayed practically still. So even if it's a Cat 5, if it quickly moves over the Bahamas, it'll cause little impact. I mean, Andrew was a Category 5 in the Bahamas. It only caused 4 deaths and $250 million in damage because it didn't stay still over the Bahamas. It didn't practically stall out over the island. And, Now, I do want to also make a note on 2022's inactivity and whether or not we're going to see no retired storms. So, as we know, 2022 has been extremely quiet so far. We don't even have a damage estimate for a single tropical storm, largely because apparently saying that flooding in Florida at the time of Alex and flooding in Cuba at the time of Alex, without actually being able to directly associate with Alex, mainly because it was on Alex's precursor, we couldn't associate the $300 million in damage, which we clearly knew was a result of Alex, to Alex as a result, in AON's report, because it didn't explicitly say. And in some cases, the people at Wikipedia have ruled that AON isn't totally reliable. NCDC reports will come out, but NCDC reports tend to, a lot of times, underestimate it, and if it's a flooding thing, it won't cover it. It'll only work if it's a tropical storm, because again, floods just happen. The TCR also might not give Alex a damage estimate, but Alex only caused 4 deaths. So I don't think that Alex will be getting retired. Alex seems like a mild tropical storm for Florida and Cuba. Bonnie also caused 4 deaths, and again, I can't see a retirement. When it was striking Central America, I thought it could have high impact, but it only struck as a tropical storm. But it then continued into the Pacific Ocean, claiming a 5th life in El Salvador before becoming a Category 3 and making it just shy of the Central Pacific Basin before dissipating. It would have been cool if it made to the CPAC though, because it would have become one of the few, maybe the only storm in history to make it from the Atlantic to the Eastern Pacific and into the Central Pacific. But it did become the first storm to make a crossover in 6 years, and like the second or third one to make crossover in 26, which is pretty impressive. And keep in mind, one of the storms that's on the like border on this account was Tropical Depression 11E in the Pacific into Tropical Storm Hermine into the Atlantic. So it's a different type of, well, crossover. But anyway, as far as the so as far as 2022, so far what I will say is that we saw Colin cause minimal damage in a death, Earl cause minimal damage in 2. That's that Danielle affected nobody. We've really seen a lot of inactivity because, again, we're only on a 6th storm, and it's already mid-September. We're pushing on late September already, but we're not quite there yet. And this is historic inactivity. This is the 3rd August in the satellite era-ish to wind up not seeing a single tropical storm form. So we pretty much wound up, not seeing the media activity. So, do I think Fiona will be retired? I'm not sure how the impacts play out, but 2022 could certainly be a year where no storm gets retired. And what I've noticed with the retirement policies too is that they've been getting more lax ever since COVID struck. And I'll make a separate video describing that.